Picture this. It's a crisp morning, the kind where the sun's just warm enough to make you want to linger outside with a mug of coffee. That's where I was, perched on my porch in Sunflower Meadows, a retirement community where the grass is always trimmed, and the biggest scandal used to be someone sneaking an extra slice of cake at bingo night. My name's Henry, by the way, retired firefighter, lover of strong brew, and, as it turns out, accidental rabble-rouser. That morning, I was half watching two squirrels duke it out over an acorn when I noticed something that stopped me cold. Old man Walter Grayson, 90 years young, a legend around here, was slumped by the curb, his prize scooter tipped over like a wounded animal. One tire was slashed clean through, and in his trembling hands, he held a scrap of cardboard ripped from a pizza box. Scrawled in black marker were the words, "Keep off the sidewalks, old-timer." Walter's eyes were wet, his fedora askew, and that sight hit me harder than a collapsing roof back in my firefighting days. See, Walter's not just any neighbor. He's a guy who used to play trumpet in jazz clubs, the one who still zips around on that red scooter with yellow flames painted on the sides, honking a little tune that makes everyone smile. For him, that scooter isn't just a ride. It's his lifeline, his freedom after a war, a couple heartbreaks, and a knee that's more metal than bone. I ambled over, crouching beside him. "You okay, Walt?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He gave a dry chuckle, the kind that's more pain than humor. "Funny thing, Henry," he said, staring at the ruined tire. "I made it through Vietnam, outlived 2 wives, and now I'm getting taken down by a tire slasher in a place that's supposed to be peaceful." That's when I spotted it. A crisp HOA notice tucked into the scooter's basket. My gut twisted as I read it. Immediate non-compliance notification. The complaint was pure nonsense. Our HOA president, Marjorie Platt, had decided that scooters, wheelchairs, anything with wheels, were visual nuisances cluttering up the neighborhood's pristine look. Her words, not mine. Such devices detract from the aesthetic uniformity of Sunflower Meadows. I wanted to rip that paper to shreds right there, but Walter put a hand on my arm. "Don't bother, Henry," he said, his voice quiet but heavy. "They just want us to fade away without a fuss." And that's when something snapped in me. I'm not your typical retiree. I've spent 35 years dragging people out of burning buildings, talking folks off ledges, even delivering a baby once in the back of a pickup. I've seen plenty, but watching Walter, a man who's given more to life than most, get humiliated over his scooter, that lit fire in me I hadn't felt in years. I helped him get the scooter upright and wheeled it back to his garage. We didn't say much. Sometimes silence says more than words, but I made him a promise as we parted ways. "This isn't over, Walt," I said, locking eyes with him. "Not by a long shot." He nodded, a flicker of hope in his tired gaze. And I knew right then we were in for a fight. Sunflower Meadows might have been a quiet, little corner of the world, but that morning it became a battlefield. And me? I was ready to roll, figuratively for now, but as you'll see, that was about to change. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying Walter's defeated slump, that stupid HOA notice, and the smug face of Marjorie Platt. She's 58, divorced 3 times, and moved here 5 years ago with a chip on her shoulder the size of Texas. She ran for HOA president unopposed. Most of us were too busy napping or fiddling with TV remotes to care, and she's been ruling ever since like she's auditioning for Dictator of the Year. She once fined a guy for painting his door a too cheerful shade of green, and another time, she forced a widow to rip out her daisies because they disrupted the flow. Now, she'd set her sights on Walter's scooter, and I wasn't about to let that slide. A few days later, the HOA meeting rolled around. I showed up early, the community center reeking of antiseptic and burnt coffee. Marjorie sat at the head of the table, her beige sweater buttoned up tight, flipping through a binder that looked like it could double as a weapon. She banged her gavel, yes, she's that type, and droned through the usual nonsense. Grass too long, wind chimes too loud, a cat staring at someone suspiciously. Then she got to the main event. "Item 17, she announced, barely glancing up. Motion to ban motorized personal vehicles on community sidewalks and common areas, effective immediately. This includes scooters, power chairs, and motorized walkers. I shot my hand up, That's half the neighborhood, Marjorie. I said, trying to keep my tone civil. She flashed that tight-lipped smile that screams I'm better than you. Only the ones causing a visual nuisance, Henry, she replied, like she was doing us a favor. I stood up, heat creeping up my neck. You're talking about Walter Grayson. She shrugged, dismissive. If the shoe fits. Walter was there, second row, hands shaking as he tried to speak, but Marjorie cut him off. We've heard enough. The motion stands. A few others piped up, good folks who saw the insanity of it, but she drowned them out with jargon she clearly didn't understand. It was brutal, watching her steamroll him, and the glint in her eye told me she loved every second of it. Afterward, I walked Walter home. We didn't talk much. The anger hung too thick between us. But that night, I grabbed an old notebook and started sketching a plan. If Marjorie wanted to ban one scooter, I'd make sure she faced a whole fleet. The next morning, I showed up at Eddie's garage with a thermos of coffee and a wild idea. Eddie's a retired mechanic. Hands like cinder blocks and a heart twice as big. He was elbow deep in a lawnmower when I laid it all out. Walter's slash tire, Marjorie's ridiculous ban, the works. He wiped his hands on a rag, squinting at me. So, what's the play, Henry? Key or car? I laughed, but only for a second. No, I said, leaning in. We're going bigger. We're throwing a senior scooter rally. Eddie blinked, like he wasn't sure he'd heard me right. A parade? No. I grinned, a rebellion. And just like that, we were off. I could feel it building, the kind of momentum that turns a spark into a wildfire. Marjorie had no idea what she'd just unleashed, but she was about to find out that messing with Walter, and the rest of us, was the dumbest move she'd ever made. Eddie and I didn't waste time. That afternoon, we started making calls, pulling together a crew that'd make any heist movie jealous. First up was Betty, 72, sharp as a whip and twice as fierce. She once argued with pharmacists for 20 minutes over fiber supplements. Pure chaos energy, perfect for this. I barely got through Walter's story before she hollered. I'm in. I'll bring cookies and a fight. Next was Ray, a paranoid ex-cop with a basement full of radios and theories about everything. Marjorie's probably in bed with the wheelchair lobby, he grumbled, which was his way of saying yes. Then there was Clara, a former lawyer who traded courtrooms for crosswords, but still had a legal mind like a steel trap. She was skeptical until I mentioned Walter's fine. I'll bring my law books and a megaphone, she said, and I knew we had our team. By evening, the five of us were crammed in my garage around a folding table, staring at a whiteboard like we were plotting a war. I sketched out Sunflower Meadows' main sidewalks, tracing a route from the clubhouse to the lakefront. We ride here, I said, tapping the map. Flags, music, the whole deal. Betty clapped. Let's make it a party. Ray scribbled slogans. Honor our wheels and scooters over scolds, while Clara dug into the HOA bylaws for loopholes. Eddie promised to tune up every scooter we could find. We dubbed ourselves the Silver Resistance, and by night's end, Betty's ancient printer had churned out 100 flyers, jamming every 5 seconds, announcing the Sunflower Meadows Senior Scooter Rally. Ride loud, ride proud. I drew a cartoon of Walter with his fedora in flames, and those flyers spread like gossip at a potluck. Word got around fast. Edna, 84, rolled up with her walker plastered in bumper stickers. George, who hadn't left his house in months, asked for a spare scooter. Even a kid from down the block offered his drone to film it. But Marjorie caught wind too. She showed up at my door, clipboard in hand, face pinched like she'd bitten a lemon. Henry, she purred, all fake sugar, I hear you're planning an unsanctioned event. I crossed my arms. You mean the rally? Her jaw tightened. Unapproved gatherings violate HOA rules. So does harassing old men. I shot back. She glared, then stormed off, but not before leaving a cease and desist notice on every doorstep the next day. That only fueled US. Eddie turned his driveway into a scooter pit stop, tightening bolts, adding horns, rigging lights. Betty baked muffins and charmed Grumps into joining, whispering, "Do it for Walter," as she handed out treats. Ray's signs popped up everywhere. Let the elders ride. My scooter, my rights. And Walter? He started smiling again, playing jazz on his old record player, while we zip-tied music note flags to scooters. "Feels like I'm back in the band," he said, eyes misty. Then a surprise. Kendra, young mom, showed up with her 5-year-old Timmy, who wanted to ride his tricycle because Walter once helped him after a fall. "He's Timmy's hero," she said, and I nearly lost it. The rally was shaping up to be more than a protest. It was a revival, and as Sunday loomed, I could feel the ground trembling under us, ready to shake Marjorie's little kingdom to its core. Sunday dawned heavy, like the air before a storm. I was up before the sun, pouring coffee into a mug that said "World's Okayest Grandpa," nerves buzzing. Outside, Sunflower Meadows felt different, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Eddie pulled up in his van, grinning like a kid on Christmas. He flung open the doors, revealing a scooter tricked out with streamers, a cup holder, twin flags, and a speaker duct taped to the side. "Meet the Patriot," he said. "She's yours." I climbed on, feeling like a general gearing up for battle. We rolled to the clubhouse, and holy smokes, it was a sight. Scooters, wheelchairs, walkers, all decked out with bells, ribbons, even a tandem bike. Walter was front and center, his scooter gleaming, fuzzy dice dangling from the handlebars, fedora tilted just so. Betty strutted in with a purple boa and swing music blaring. Ray had a GoPro strapped on, muttering about HOA oppression footage. Clara clutched legal papers, ready for a showdown. People I hadn't seen in years, folks who'd been cooped up, heads down, were there, laughing proud. The air crackled with something big. Walter rolled forward, raised a hand, and tapped the speaker. "All right, everyone," he said, voice steady. "Today we show them what we're made of. We ride with pride with music, and if we have to, over Marjorie's lawn." The crowd roared, chanting, "Go, go, go!" And we were off. Scooters hummed, horns blared, flags flapped as we streamed out of the lot. Neighbors waved. Kids ran alongside with signs. Someone tossed confetti from a balcony. Timmy led on his tricycle, a balloon bobbing behind him. It was electric. We hit the main sidewalk, passing the pool, the courts, and yep, Marjorie's house, a beige fortress of petty tyranny. There she was, arms crossed, glaring like we'd ruined her life. Her mouth moved a mile a minute, phone in hand, probably calling her lawyer army. Walter gave her a slow salute. Betty blew a kiss. Ray yelled about constitutional rights. And we rolled on, unstoppable. Halfway through, Edna's scooter spun out, motor hiccuping. Eddie fixed it while Betty fed her banana bread. And Ray's drone buzzed overhead, catching it all. Then Marjorie made her move, standing in the road, arms out like some HOA Gandalf. "This is illegal," she shrieked. Walter revved up, cranked his jazz, and swerved around her. "Out of the way! Killjoy," he grinned. We followed, laughing as Clara shouted legal threats through her megaphone. Marjorie was left fuming as we finished at the lakeside gazebo, where Eddie had snacks waiting. Walter raised a root beer. "To every one of you," he toasted, "to the wheels beneath us and the hearts beside us. We're old, but we're not done rolling." The applause shook the trees as the sun dipped low, and I knew this was just the beginning of something bigger. The rally's glow lingered like fresh-baked bread the next morning, but Marjorie wasn't done. I opened my door to a white envelope slapped dead center, red letters screaming notice of violation. Every house had one. Fines of $500 for disturbing the peace and unauthorized demonstration. Walters came with a bonus. Ride again and he'd lose clubhouse access, pool rights, everything. It was vicious, petty, and classic Marjorie. I found him clutching his letter, pale like he blamed himself. "You didn't do this," I said, gripping his shoulder. "She did." We huddled in Eddie's garage that afternoon, the mood teetering between fear and fury. Walter looked crushed, but Clara stood up, glasses low, fire in her eyes. "Marjorie messed up," she said, flipping open a binder. "These fines tied to an amendment she pushed 3 weeks ago. No vote, no notice, no comment period. It's void." The room lit up. Betty hooped. Ray ranted about lawsuits. Walter even smiled. "And," Clara grinned, "one board signature's fake. I checked. It's fraud." My pulse raced. We had her. How do we prove it? I asked. Clara nodded. I've got evidence. We need her to slip up publicly. Ray leaned in, recorded her, bait her into spilling it. It was dicey, but Marjorie's ego was her weakness. She couldn't resist a chance to gloat. I volunteered. Next day, I lured her to the gazebo, a lapel mic Ray rigged hidden in my jacket. She strutted up, oozing superiority. Henry, I hope you see how serious this is, she started. Your little stunt threatened Sunflower Meadows Foundation. I played it cool. It was just a rally, Marjorie, for dignity. She scoffed. It's about appearances. That's why I fast-tracked the amendment. Waiting for votes would have slowed everything down. I let her ramble. 15 minutes of her admitting she skipped protocol, forged signatures, all because most residents are too old to care. It was a gold mine. I thanked her, shook her hand, and bolted to Ray's. He grinned, holding up a tablet. She just confessed her own crimes. Clara packaged it. Audio, fake signatures, bylaw breaches, into what she called Operation Takedown. We sent it to the board, the news, the state housing folks. Marjorie's castle was crumbling, and she didn't even know it yet. 2 days later, Marjorie called an emergency meeting, looking rattled, like she'd sensed the pitchforks coming. The room was packed, residents, gawkers, even outsiders drawn by the rally buzz. She tried to run the show, but Clara stood, reciting her violations like a prosecutor. Ray blasted the audio, Marjorie's voice echoing her own doom. Board members went white. One bolted mid-speech. When it ended, Walter shuffled up front. All I wanted, he said softly, was a ride to the clubhouse. That's it. The silence was deafening. The board voted in private. 10 tense minutes, then returned. Jim, a shaky guy who dodged the last vote, spoke. Marjorie Platt is removed as HOA president, effective now. The place erupted. Cheers! A walker flung like a grad cap. Marjorie, red-faced, snatched her bag and stormed out, snarling, You'll regret this. No one chased her. That night, we threw a cookout. Walter grilled burgers. Betty brought pies. Clara mixed sangria. We laughed, danced, fell whole again. I gave Walter a box, a new scooter key, and a plate reading Walt won. He laughed till he wheezed. You didn't, he said. We did, I replied, together. As the sun set, jazz floating through the air, I knew we'd done more than win a fight. We'd rebuilt something precious. But the story wasn't over. The world was about to notice us, and Sunflower Meadows would never be the same. The week after Marjorie's exit felt like a dream soaked in jazz and victory pie. Walter was back, zipping around, a bell chiming on his scooter, like a freedom anthem. People waved from porches. Strangers turned allies overnight. Then Ray uploaded a video. 3 minutes of rally glory. Walter's killjoy quip, Marjorie's roadblock flop, our triumphant roll. It exploded. 50,000 views, then 500,000. News outlets pounced. Silver Rebels topple HOA tyrant. Scooter squad rides again. Reporters swarmed, and Walter, bless him, stepped up. We're not troublemakers, he told the camera, grinning. We just want to ride to bingo without a fine. That line was everywhere. Fan mail poured in. Kid scooter drawings. College kids inspired. A mobility company offering to sponsor next year's rally with a tricked-out scooter for Walter. He cried, we all did. The State Mobility Board featured us in their magazine, calling it elder activism at its finest, and invited Walter and Clara to speak. The mayor handed Walter a shiny new key to the city on the clubhouse lawn. I didn't want to be a symbol, he said, voice cracking. I just didn't want to disappear. Cue the waterworks. Then Sam nominated me for HOA president. I balked. I'm no leader, I kill plants. But they insisted. I won, promising to ditch the clipboard for compassion. First act, I scrapped the scooter ban, wrote mobility rights charter, and made the rally annual. We celebrated under string lights, Walter on harmonica, Betty tipsy, and racing Eddie, she won. The city's TV station called. I narrated a documentary, ending with Walter riding into the sunset, flag flying. Months later, Walter wrote Wheels of Liberty, funding scooters and a scholarship for Timmy. Clara taught legal workshops. Ray ran it on a podcast. Betty sold muffins for garden tools. Me? I led with coffee and heart. One day, I asked Walter if he'd seen this coming. Not in a million years, Henry, he grinned. But now when I ride, I'm seen. So if you hear a scooter bell or jazz in Sunflower Meadows, tip your hat. That's Walter leading our rolling rebels, and we're not slowing down.